Alright, we did it, everybody. We made it. Illidan Stormrage, the last boss in Black Temple, boss number 9. That's this guy. Let's do it. So Illidan Stormrage. Oh boy, where to start? Here is the absolute mountain of text it takes to deal with every single ability that this guy has. It is a 3 or 4 to 5 stage fight, depending on how you look at it. We will be looking at it in 5 distinct phases. I think that is much easier, and each one is tackled totally different with a whole new set of abilities, at least each one in between. However, stages 1, 3, and 5 are all relatively the same, but with very slight adjustments, but that do really affect how we go about the fight. So here we go. We're going to talk about positioning a lot. There's a lot of positioning that goes into it. There's a lot of mechanics. I will try to split it up as best I can. But here we go. We will start with phase 1. So actually, before we start with phase 1, we're going to start with some needs of the fight. What we are going to need is one main tank with easy activation or easy active mitigation that comes in the form of a warrior. We're going to need 2 fire resist tanks with max buffed fire resist. This, going back to our shadow resistance talk with Mother Shiraz, 365 is the max, so we want our tanks to be at 365 buffed fire resist, because there is a lot of fire damage that comes out, as well as be defense capped if possible, or crit immune, whatever it's called, however you do it. Be as fire resistant and as defense capped as possible in order to take the least amount of damage possible. As well as that, we're going to need 1 Shadow Resist Warlock, who will also need to be max Shadow Resist when buffed. Preferably, if you can find a Warlock who is Demonology spec with Soul Link, definitely cuts the damage that happens down a lot. However, this is way overkill and not necessary. Any Warlock with max Shadow Resist will do. And finally, we're going to need some big gas energy. We need raiders who are ready to come in and kick big bag's butt, but we all know that's us anyway, so let's finally be able to tackle this guy. So going into phase 1. Oh boy, how to start. Phase 1, you will talk to Akama and he will start. The boss will start kind of around here in the room. So what we're going to do is we are going to have the boss be tanked kind of on the outer edge here. Really, it can just be tanked anywhere out here. It doesn't really matter if it's here or up here. Just tank the boss over here. When this fight starts, healers need to know the tank is going to be absolutely decimated for like 1 to 2 auto attacks. For whatever reason, the beginning of the fight, he just murders the tank. So healers be precasting just like you did with Mother Shiraz. He does a ton of damage. We'll get Mistrux onto the tank over there. Other than that, the melee will just stack behind the boss. Ranged and healers will stack up over here. And the reason for that is the boss has a debuff called Parasitic Shadow Fiend. When the debuff wears off, you will explode and summon a bunch of adds, like 3 Parasitic Shadow Fiend adds. So what you're going to do, if you get the debuff, you will run on over to X, where hunters will have laid frost traps and freezing traps around to try and slow all of the adds that come out. Mages will also be able to use Novas on these adds. If it is working how it is on PTR, the adds only have 3,000 health, so you really don't need all range to switch to them. Warlocks, there's no real need to switch them, at least in phase 1, but when they drop, range, turn and kill them. Do not let them hit melee. Kill them quick. If they hit melee, then they will spawn more, and those guys will spawn more, and it gets out of control very quickly. So mages and other cleave and big AoE guys like Elishams with their chain lightnings will just destroy these things. So just turn, mages, Elishams, turn, kill them quick, don't let them hit anyone. That's the main mechanic of the fight. Aside from that, the boss will do a flame crash on the ground. It looks like this. When he does the flame crash, the tank just moves slightly to the right, and will just keep moving, well, to his right, to our left, and he will just keep moving this way. There shouldn't be that many flame crashes, maybe 3 or 4 before the phase ends. I think that's about it in terms of positioning. Yep. Just remember, tanks, that the damage is slightly larger than the animation here, so give it a little bit more of a breath, and yeah. Other important things to know for the tank. The boss has a shear ability. Shear is a cast that when it hits you, if you do not have active mitigation up when it is cast, it will decrease your max HP by 60% for 7 seconds. So, warrior tank, always keep your active mitigation up, and you never have to worry about shear. Whenever you see the shear cast, make sure you're spamming active mitigation button to make sure that you have something up, and you will be fine. The boss also does a frontal AoE cone that heals him for damage dealt, so obviously point him away from the raid. And rogues, make sure you keep up wound poison, or arms warriors, mortal strikes, or aim shots from hunters. So we keep that healing to a minimum. I already mentioned the flame crash. When it happens, you really don't want to move the boss that much. So as a tank, you can wiggle around and use the turn radius of the boss's model to move him, or to maneuver yourself out of the fire, but keep the boss in a steady position. All of the tanks are going to need to be really good at this for this fight. It'll happen more in phase 2, but all tanks should learn how to do this. It's really not that difficult. The boss has a model that is so much bigger than you, and because of that, you have room to work with by moving around, and you really need to become masters at moving yourself without moving the boss. Kind of comes down to like what I was saying for the month of Shiraz stuff, of trying to push her, but in this case we're trying not to push Illidan. We're trying to just turn him very slightly without actually moving him, because the more that he moves, the longer this phase is going to take. And I mean, it's not really a race, but there's no reason to make it last longer than it should. So try to move as little as possible and keep him in position. Like I said, there's going to be huge damage on the tank as soon as the phase starts. Healers, get ready to pump at the start. Priest, pre-cast, get that inspiration buff going. And if you have the parasitic debuff on you, make sure you run to X to drop it. Make sure you get there before the debuff runs out. Works just like Terran Gorefiend debuff. Get there, drop it, get out, and let the ranged kill it. One thing to notice, if it goes onto the tank, which it can, if the debuff goes onto the tank, all melee need to run away until the tank drops the adds and the range can clean up the adds. So if it goes on the tank, melee run, and then get back in once the adds are dead. Okay? So moving on to phase 2. After the boss reaches 65%, phase 2 will begin. He will fly up into the air, and he will throw 2 glaives onto the ground summoning 2 giant fire elementals. Fire elementals will spawn at X and at Skull. Sorry, X and Skull. This is where the fire resistance tanks come in. These guys do massive damage, and healers, this is, or honestly for everyone, this is the hardest part of the fight. Right here. We may be popping Bloodlust here, just to try to get through it as fast as possible. Healing is very intensive, and the tanks take a ton of damage. So, how we are going to tank them. These mobs cannot be moved, can never be moved more than 20 yards away from the glaives that they spawn. As well as no person can ever be a certain yard away from the mobs, or else they will charge that person. By charging that person, they will then break their tether to the glaives and enrage. So we want the entire raid to be stacking inside of this grate on the center of the room. Every single person in the raid is going to be inside of this grate, except for the 2 tanks. The 2 tanks are going to pull the mobs as soon as they come out, pull them to about here. This boss room is made deliberately to be used as sort of physical guides on where to tank these ads. So you're gonna have this. You have this outer circle, and you have this inner circle that I refer to as the second inner circle. This is the main circle we're going to be talking about. So the second inner circle, we're talking about this one, and the closer one in here, we're calling the grate. Okay, the grate, second inner circle, outer circle. Okay, so when the ads spawn, both tanks are going to tank the boss to the southern side of the second inner circle. It is important that both tanks go to the same side, because if this tank goes south and this tank goes north, these 2 mobs will be far enough away that like this mob will charge this tank, breaking this, enraging and wiping the team. So both tanks need to be tanking in a very symmetrical pattern so that they are always within range of each other. So you're going to pull it to about here. There's no good way to do it. We'll explain it when we get there. But really, pull it to about here on the second inner circle. And then the boss, or the elementals, do a frontal cleave, frontal breath. So never point it at the raid. And as they do the breath, it will drop a huge patch of fire on the ground. So once it drops a patch of fire, you will sidestep over here. And this goes back to what I was talking about before, about using the models to your advantage so you can wiggle them without moving the actual mob itself. So point it here, kind of facing this way, to make sure it's not facing the other tank or the other guys. Once it breathes, you will slightly rotate over here. It'll breathe again, you'll rotate over here, it'll breathe again, and then you'll start moving this way. With each patch of fire, you'll move further and further down. Once you get to the northern tip, which is about here, exactly opposite the same distance that you took them to the south side, because remember, you can't take them any further this way, or else they're going to get past the 20 yards of the glaive that they originally dropped at. Once this happens, you'll have to make a U-turn and start heading back. This is very scary because you will then, when you do the U-turn, you will be pointing the breath at the raid. You cannot point the breath at the raid. So there are 2 ways to do it. Either do the U-turn this way and go on the outside, but make sure you're never too far away that the glaives break, or you take it a little slower on the outside here on the first go around, and on a second go around you cut it in tight around here, which I would suggest doing that because then it gives the raid more room to work with. So you're going to kite up and down past the second inner circle. I would cut the second inner circle into 2 halves, an outer and an inner, and you're going to place the first fire on the outers, outer, 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 all the way out here, and then give yourself room to make a quick turnaround here. If you have to move the boss or the mob more to make sure it doesn't point at the raid, do it. It is more important that it does not face the raid than flame patches are put in the correct spots. So if you need to, you can turn the mob, wait for a flame breath to go off, turn the mob, and run all the way back to like here. Run all the way back to the original position. At that point, the mob would have followed you and is now facing this way and away from the raid. Do whatever you can to make sure it stays away, never points the raid. By the time, if you do it correctly, by the time you get back to here, the first fires would have despawned and you can do it all again. However, we will be killing Skull first, so we will be killing the one on the right side as we are facing the entrance. So the way that this is laid out, this is the entrance, this is north, south, obviously. So we will be killing the eastern one first. The Skull target probably won't have to rotate back. We should have the DPS to kill it before it rotates. If we don't have the DPS, then we're in more of trouble than we need to be there. So you should have the DPS to kill it. We'll be burning less, we'll be killing it and doing damage and whatever. X is really the one that we probably won't have Skull down fast enough to then turn on X to have it done, so you will have to get this U-turn done correctly. So whoever is going to be the X target, whichever tank it is, probably the pally, one of the pallies or bear tank, really pay attention to what I'm saying here and how to kite this effectively. But that's the main part of phase 2 for the tanks. For everyone else, we are going to split up the rest of the raid into 3 separate stack points. They need to be as far away from each other as possible. This is a bit of a fluid stack points here, because if a fire gets put in the wrong spot and a tank needs to point the boss at something, it's not solely on the tank. Everyone else can move out of it. So say, for example, this mob was pointing here, and it's going to clip triangle. Triangle needs to move, but the only way to make that work is if moon moves over here, square moves up here, and triangle moves over here. So call it out if your stack point is going to get hit, and every stack point needs to move as a group together. The reason why we need a group like this is that the boss will do a fire barrage, or not the barrage, but we'll do a fire blast on the ball or on the raid, and it will do splash damage that will hurt anyone within 5 yards. So we stack up in 3 separate groups in order to reduce the amount of damage going out to everyone. It's a lot easier to stack like this. This is not a lot of room to work with. We can't just spread, because then people are going to get clipped by multiple fireballs all at the same time and healers won't be able to keep up. It's easier just to stay in these 3 groups and just let it go. Another thing to worry about is melee. We are going to try to have the melee spread out. We are going to try to have triangle have more melee in it so they can kind of work on this boss and be in this stack. But melee is going to have to move with the boss. The main thing for melee to worry about is if you are melee and the boss is right here, do not be standing in between 2 groups to hit the elemental. If you are standing in between 2 groups, you will get hit by a fireball, and now you'll be clipping 2 groups with it rather than just hitting yourself. So as a melee, try to hug the boss as much as you can to get away from these. If there's no good way to damage him without being in range of both other groups, it's better just to stay back, stay in your group, and do nothing for this phase. Clipping people with more fireballs is the easiest way to wipe us as a melee. So if you can't do it safely, don't do it at all. That's what it comes down to. If there's enough melee and it works out, we can call to have, maybe Moon move slightly over here, give us a little bit more room. If that happens, it happens, but I wouldn't bet on it, because especially the healers just need to kind of plant their feet and be a turret as much as possible during this phase, because the amount of healing is actually insane. So I believe that's about it for the phase. Oh, there's also an I-beam, forgot to mention. There's an I-beam that the boss will do. It'll always be tangential to this I believe it's always tangential to this inner outer circle here. So like, it'll always be at a 90-degree angle to this circle, which means that it can go through tanks. Tanks need to look out for it. It's just a giant blue fireball, or fire line, looks like the Supremist fire. When it is being put down, it does a massive amount of damage. After the fire's on the ground, I mean, obviously you don't want to stand in fire, it's really easy to stand out of, but mainly look out for where it's being applied, because that will just one-shot you. So do not be in there. If a tank needs to change their pathing order because of a beam, call it out. Everyone else is going to have to pay attention to a call out if that does happen and adjust accordingly. It's going to be fluid. It's not going to be this rigid. It's going to be a little difficult, but this is the most difficult part of the last boss of this entire raid. So it is what it is. Yeah. So that's all of the positioning in phase 2. Here is an example of what the stack points will actually look like. Here is the total outer circle. Here is the inner circle that I was mentioning, the second inner circle, and here is the grate that I was talking about. As you can see, this is not a whole lot of space to work with. And here is an example of the 3 sort of stack points. So you have triangle, moon, square, looking just like triangle, moon, square. And then you have skull and X over here. So like I said, skull is going to tank the boss to about here is probably the max you can take it. Maybe here. One of these two is probably the max. We'll have to do a 20-yard rangefinder to figure out which one it is. I believe these notches on the floor are supposed to be sort of guidelines with how far you can go. So when these things come down, the tank will take skull down here to the southern end of the room. We'll tank it here, and then we'll go around. We'll go around this circle, and then they will make it to about here. And once they get to here, they will turn around and work their way back. If you have enough room, do not go too much further outside of this zone, or else you will outrange the other one. So if you can't safely stand, like go no further than what this bear is right here. If you can't safely go further than that, if you need to go further to turn it around this way, then don't do it. Turn around the inside and call for melee and one of these stack groups to move. Okay, and X just mirrors the same thing. Always mirror each other. Always be, across from each other at all times to not get out of range. So skull will bring it to about here, and we'll slowly kite it around this way until here, and then kite it back. All right. Like I said, phase 2, hardest part of the phase. Lots of damage, precise positioning, and lots of mechanics to watch for them, for the DPS. Lots of things for everyone to worry about: healers, tanks, and DPS all at the same time. We will be popping lusts here, like I said, and just burn skull as quickly as possible. Be careful with threat. Threat will be an issue because these tanks are going to be in resist gear. As well, the very first phase will not last 3 minutes. Most likely won't last 3 minutes. It'll probably be around 2.5. So save MDs for phase 2 if that is the case. Phase 2 is much more important than phase 3, or than phase 1. So save MDs for phase 2. Maybe use one MD for phase 1, and then save the other MDs for phase 2. Alright. Like I said, Illidan will do fireballs that splash anyone within 10 yards. I think I said 5 yards before. It's 10 yards. It's much bigger than what you think. Really try to stay grouped as much as you can, and melee avoid hitting 2 groups at the same time. There's also another mechanic that I didn't mention yet, where someone will be targeted with Dark Barrage. Dark Barrage is just a huge damage dealing attack that hurts the person every second. Healers really need to be able to spam Flash of Lights or Flash Heals on that character. They're going to take a bunch of damage all at the same time, or not at the same time, but very quickly. So spam those people. There's no way around it. You have a bit of a break after this phase going to the next phase, so healers, really, this is the hardest part. So use your mana, and you might be able to get some of it back later. But use your mana, ask for innervates when you need them. The I-beams will come along later. I have a slide for it later, so just wait for it. And don't get hit by the charge, don't go too far enough away. Also, one other thing to note is if people die during this phase, which is the most likely place we are going to have people die, do not use battle reses during this phase. There has been a reported bug where people were battle resing, and as soon as you accept the battle res, the flame will charge them no matter what. It doesn't matter where. It just, the second they accept the battle res, the flame counts them as being out of range, and they will charge them immediately. So, just to be safe, don't battle res. And also, there's so much random damage that goes out anyway that taking a battle res is very risky in the first place. So, don't battle res during this phase, if at all possible. And there's a bit of a wait time after this before Illidan comes down, so use that time to battle res people anyway. Okay. Here is an example of how to kite the flame. You can kite. This is like 2 flames back to back. This is how big the flame really is. So as you can see, they're kiting along this second inner circle. This is the outer circle, second inner circle. This is the grate. He's kiting right along the circle. I'd suggest doing a little bit more either on the outside first or on the inside first. Do the outside first if possible, and give you some room for when you have to kite back the other way. But as you can see, even the way he's doing it right now, where he's just along this line, he will still have room to move, do a quick turn in here, and have the boss facing here. Like if he's standing right here, the boss will be facing the other way. If he's standing right here, the boss will be facing this way, and he'll go that way. Gotta stop clicking on accident. But it's not terribly difficult once you get a hang of it, but it will cause wipes. It's gonna happen. It's not. It's just gonna take some tries. It's just a mechanic that takes some tries. So finally, here is the I-beams. Like I said, it's just these big blue things. They go tangentially to these. I guess it seems like they're almost going tangentially to the grates. So, oh yeah, they do go right through. So never mind, they go tangentially to the grates. So this is why everyone needs a stack in the grate, and this is why the tanks are going to be hit really hard with it. So I believe you can see right here, the beam is coming down, and this fire is being drawn right here. If you are standing right here, that flame's going to destroy you and just kill you. So don't stand in it when it is being drawn. And you see this tank is in it right now for a second. He's going to have to move back this way. It causes a lot of problems, but tanks, do your best. Do whatever you think makes sense to get you safe and get out of there. Also, if the fire ends up going on one of stack groups, call it out. And like I said, groups will have to rotate slightly around each other. You know, if this stack group used to be here, then they have to move, so now they have to move to the left. Every other group just kind of moves and rotates together, all in the same direction. We'll call it out. We'll say moon to triangle, triangle to moon, you know, moon to triangle, triangle to square, square to old moon spot, something like that. Alright, so once you kill the flames, Illidan will drop back down, sort of in the center here. Threat will reset, so be careful. Any more MDs we have, throw them into the tank at that time. Let the tank pick it up. He's going to take damage as he brings it back. But then we're going to tank the boss all the way back here, in between, in the very middle of these pillars here. We'll tank him right here, pointing away from the raid. Melee. At this point in time, there is a new mechanic that completely changes how we had done phase 1. Other than that, this is phase 1, and everything is the same except for Agonizing Flame. Agonizing Flame puts a 1-minute dot on a person, and it does a good amount of damage, but it hits everyone within 5-yard radius. So everyone needs to be spread out as much as possible. Melee will try to get groups on both sides of the boss, but honestly, if you can find a room where you can be 5 yards away from any other melee member, do it. This dot, it's just a 1-minute dot, and it just drains healers' mana, so stay spread out. Healers in range also spread out. Mages, try to split yourselves up so that there's one mage on each side of the boss, because just like phase 1, he will still be doing his parasitic Shadow Fiends, which will be that debuff. And after the debuff ends, you will spawn a bunch of Shadow Fiends. So what we're going to do is hunters will place traps back here, and mages will split up and be on both sides of the boss. If you get a parasitic Shadow Fiend, and you can do it safely, run to either a mage, a trap, or another mage. You should have enough room, and there should be enough spaces to get you wherever you need to try to stop the Shadow Fiends and slow them as much as you can. But in this phase, unlike in phase 1 where I said warlocks, don't worry about switching to them because they don't have enough health, in this case every single person who is in range needs to switch to those Shadow Fiends. We cannot let them get out of control or we will wipe. So call it out when it's happening. Say for example this healer got it, they will try to move slightly over to the mage. Do not be within 5 yards. Once the Shadow Fiends drop, the mage will Nova, and all of these ranged who are in range will attack it. These ranged, do not move over to try to attack it, because then you're just going to run over other people. If you're not in range where you can hit it safely, don't hit it, just keep hitting the boss. And yeah, that's really it. It's the same thing as phase 1. It's just this added mechanic of trying to be spread really affects how we do it, and it adds a much more damaging portion to it, as well as the tank will still be getting flame crashes, and he'll still have to be moving. We're still going to say he's going to move to the left here whenever he gets a flame crash, but try not to move it as much as possible again. And the warlock tank is going to be stacked up over to the right here, That's just for the next phase, but they will be standing onto the right here, and no one else should take this position. Let the Warlock have it. Okay? I believe I just went over and said everything here. Just again, make sure the mages get Novas off. We kill those parasitic Shadow Fiends as fast as possible, and you stay spread. All ranged, kill them as much as possible. And boss still uses shear, so again, warrior, keep up your mitigation. He does the AoE frontal cone, don't point him at the raid. After 40 to 50 seconds, the boss will kneel over and turn into a demon, and that will start phase 4. So he'll turn big, and he'll change colors, and that will signal that phase 4 is happening. When this happens, as soon as he kneels over, everyone needs to get away from the boss. Everyone. So he will also reset threat, so a lock will need to pick up the boss when he pops up. So a lock will be standing here. This is why we want a lock to be there. And no one can be within 15 yards of that lock. So everyone else needs to fall back, be max range if you are ranged. Healers will need to start falling back because in this phase, no melee can be hitting the boss. And we need to be spread out, and we want melee to be spread out as much as possible. So melee and tanks are all going to run to the back of the room because there's nothing else you can do during this phase. Healers will need to back up anyway to keep in range of everyone. So healers start backing up, range starts stepping up to take their spot, but all range be max range of the boss at this point in time. While you're running, melee should be dropping Earthbind totems, and hunters should be dropping frost traps right here, right in front of the boss, right on square. Not on top of the boss, don't pop them early, but right in front of the boss. Because the boss is going to summon a bunch of adds, and we want them slowed, and we need them killed as fast as possible, or else people will die. So, what's going to happen is everyone's going to run and spread out. You need to be spread out because the boss is going to cast Flame Burst. This does splash damage to anyone within 5 yards, and it hits every single person in the raid. So every single person gets hit with a 5 yard splash. Nobody can be stacked, or else you will be dying to it. So everyone spread out. At the same time, he will be summoning 4 shadow demons that will fixate random targets, and they will also stun that target. That person cannot run, cannot move, cannot do anything while that mob is alive. If that mob reaches the target, they will instantly kill them. Instantly dead. So they need to be killed before they reach the target. Mages can imp Blizzard as soon as the mobs come out. The frost traps will trigger as soon as they come out, and all ranged just needs to kill them as fast as possible. Focus the ones that are targeting the people in the front first, especially the one that if one goes onto the lock tank, because he is probably going to be the closest to the boss anyway. Focus any ad that is on one of these guys first. These guys should all be max range to give us the most time possible. Melee, when these ads spawn, you are going to have the urge to step forward to try to help and kill the ads. Do not do that. Melee, do not step forward to help kill ads. Same for ranged. If all the ads happen to be going this way and you're ranged over here, do not step forward to try to kill those ads, because a flame burst is about to come. Once the flame burst comes, and after it's hit, then you have 20 seconds to do whatever you want before you need to be spread before the next flame burst happens. There's going to be 3 flame bursts every phase, and you have 20 seconds in between each one. Do what you want with those 20 seconds, but make sure that you're spread before the end. Good rule of thumb is use those 15 seconds to kill mobs, and the last 5 seconds right before the next flame burst, run back to your spot. These mobs should die very quickly anyway, so there's a lot of downtime. It's really just that first wave that is really important, because everyone's going to feel the need to move closer to do damage when there's also a flame burst that's about to come in, so be careful. This is just a recap of everything I've said. Wrestler raid, spread for flame burst, healers, it's a ton of damage to everyone in the raid. We need to be as far away as we can for shadow demons, give us as much time as possible. The boss has an AoE aura, that's also why melee cannot be on the boss. It just does AoE damage to anyone within 15 yards of him, so melee, don't even try hitting the boss. Even during those 20-second downtimes of flame burst, don't try hitting the boss, there's no reason, you're just going to take damage. Get the frost binding, or frost traps and bindings down. This is more just a recap kind of everything, to not be so in depth, just kind of going through it. After the flame burst, you have the 20 seconds, be spread for the next burst, and after 60 seconds of all this garbage, phase 3 will begin again. Reset, or threat will reset, and we will go all the way back to phase 3, where we are spread again with tanks and melee moving back to the front, healers moving up, and range sort of moving back. And we just do this again, and we keep repeating phase 3 and phase 4, phase 3 and phase 4, until the boss gets to 30% health. We will try to push him during phase 3 instead of during a phase 4, because after he gets to 30%, he will stun every single person in the raid for like 30 seconds. He'll do some RP, and then he'll pick back up, threat will reset, and he will begin attacking the threat will not reset at that point, but he will begin attacking the closest person. You want to push him during phase 3, because then threat will be on a tank rather than on the lock tank, and if we push him during phase 4, our tanks are all the way back here. That's a long time for them to run up and try to pick up aggro that they're not going to get off of the lock tank at that point, because they're not building any threat during phase 4. So if it gets to the point that we have the boss at like 35% and run a phase 4, just stop DPS and push him during the next phase 3. Okay? Here's what the shadow demons look like. Here are the tanks spread out as far away from this boss as possible. Here's all of the ranged spread out, and healers and everyone spread out over 5 yards. This is what the fixate looks like. If you get fixated, you are stunned. Every single person needs to kill those ads as fast as possible. Yep, that's about it. Give me 1 second. Just gonna change the music a little bit. Alright. Here is an example. This is a few seconds after the picture I just showed you. So, at the beginning of the phase, all of these will spawn. A few seconds later, a couple of these guys have died, but also this flame crash is coming down. This is the flame burst. This is why I'm saying, do not feel that urge to move in closer, because you will start exploding people with this flame burst. Wait till the flame burst goes out, and then finish up the ads. They don't have a lot of health. Trust your other DPS to kill them in time, and once it's dead, then focus on picking up everything else. These guys also did a good job in they killed the fixates that were going to closer targets first, so the ones all the way in the back were the only ones that were still alive. Okay? So, finally, once we do push him during phase 3, into 30% health, he will push into phase 5. At that point, we'll have that 30-second cutscene, like I said. The boss does not reset threat on PTR. Be careful what happens on retail, or not retail, classic, when it comes out. We're not sure if it does reset threat. Either way, whenever a phase change happens, just pay attention and watch your threat. Alright. Phase 5 is the exact same as Phase 3. So we will all be spread around. We still have the parasitic Shadow Fiend to deal with. And he will still be using Agonizing Flame. The thing that's different is now he will enrage for the last 20 seconds of Phase 3. He will do a crap load of damage to the tanks, and at this point, tanks need to pop whatever defenses they have to try to get through it. While this is happening, Maiev will also teleport to a semi-random place in the room, and she will drop a trap. The trap looks like this thing right here. What we can do to help with the enrage is once she drops the trap, we can pull the boss over to the trap, and the tank can right-click the trap, and then once the boss gets pulled into it, he will be stunned for 15 seconds and take 100% increased damage. While that's happening, he's not doing any of his other mechanics, so everyone just blow up the boss as much as you can. If he is not dead within those 15 seconds, then he will go back into a Phase 4, and then we will repeat what we did in Phase 4, with tanks running back to the back, healers falling back, melee back, kill the guys, and then watch out for flame crashes, and then it'll go back into Phase 5. And that'll be what'll happen until the end of the fight. Hopefully, we will not have to do another Phase 4 after Phase 5 happens, and we can just kill them all within that one trap, but it is possible that that does not happen. So, be ready for it. If the trap is in a very bad spot, and the tank would have to run it through all of the raid, consider just popping cooldowns and keeping the boss in a good position, because then we will not be screwing up our positions going into Phase 4 when it does happen. So like, for example, if the tank moved the boss over here into a trap, we didn't kill him in time, then Phase 4 would happen, but now where is our raid gonna stack? You know, it's gonna be a lot of confusion with the lock trying to get to a new position, everyone else spreading back out. Those big demons are gonna start coming out, and people are probably not gonna be max range from it. It's going to be a mess. So if we don't think we have the DPS for it, consider not going over the trap. But I would like us to go over the traps as much as possible. It just increases damage and helps our healers out. So go over traps. Again, overview of everything I just said. It's just like Phase 3. Which is just like Phase 1, except we still have the parasites, still have Agonizing Flame, and he will enrage. And after the enrage, he will go back into Phase 4, drag him to the trap, get increased damage, get rid of the enrage, and yeah, just stay spread, deal with parasites, pay attention, listen to comms, listen to callouts. It's a very long-winded fight, but it's not actually that long of a fight on the PTR. Our Kael'thas or Vosh kills were actually longer than the kills on the PTR. A lot of the PTR kills I was seeing were, 8 minutes, 8.5. Whereas Vosh kills, were 9, 10, 11. Some of them were 13, 14 kills. So, yeah. That is it. That is all of T6. That is Illidan. Thank you for watching, everybody. Hope this helped. And yeah, I will see you all on BT.